Welcome to the Monday Minute of the Hunt Backcountry podcast. These are, at least normally, shorter and more informal episodes where we answer listener questions. Today is definitely going to be informal, although we're not going to answer listener questions on this episode. And in terms of shorter, I don't know how long this one's going to end up being, Steve, but we just got back last week from the first of three Alaska hunts this fall for the Experience Project. I'm sure many of you are aware of that, but if you somehow are finding this episode and aren't aware of what that means, be sure to go to the Experience Project website. There's a link in the episode description for that. But we wrapped up the caribou hunts. You and I, Justin from SNS Archery, and our good buddy Jeff Bloomquist. I don't even know where to go, Steve. I feel like everything I want to start to say sounds like hype, but it
Mm.
was an amazing hunt.
The top three for me, for sure. I got my two sheep hunts that I've done and this one. And I remember we were floating the river down and you kept just saying like you felt like you were in a dream. And that definitely stuck with me because it was just surreal. Like you like, am I gonna wake up from this? It was the coolest adventure hunt. I mean, we had adversity, we had incredibly great hunting, we had beautiful weather, crummy weather. I think when I did an Instagram post, my one post of the year, and I think I could not sit down and like write out a story and have it come out how that hunt turned out. Like it was so amazing. Uh, yeah, and then the fact that we captured the whole thing on video, and obviously I haven't seen all the footage yet, and Justin was running camera most of the time, and I was running a backup camera. But the I'm very excited for the video portion of this when that comes out. I don't know. We got a lot going on right now. I don't know when Justin's gonna be able to start getting into there and diving into that, editing it, but it's going to be pretty fantastic, I think.
It is hard to put into words, and it just makes me think of, as we've talked about so many times, and the reason we call the Experience Project by that name is for us, the hunt is all about the whole experience, not just the animal, not just the photo, not just the quote unquote success, but just everything that goes into it, the hard work, the good, the bad, the adversity, the elation, like everything. And I mean, this hunt was just that, man. It was, yeah, it was just pretty dang amazing and so cool to, like, when I think of my top three hunts, this one's definitely in it for sure. And then things like my goat hunt or my sheep hunt and all that. But one thing with those is it was just me with a tag on those, right? So, like, they were amazing adventures, lots of adversity, etc. But this one's so unique to have all of that adventure and adversity and success, yes, but also success times four, not just one. And to share that, I mean, and to do it with the group of guys we did, and everybody's as happy as could be for each other, and there's no, competition or selfishness. And we were all, I know Jeff said for him, it was like the most physical hunt he had done simply because there wasn't a hard day or like a hard pack out when we had four of them. Um, it was just an incredibly demanding pursuit. It was, yeah, it was awesome. So this is gonna feel scattered, this conversation today, because we can't get on here and tell the whole story, partially because we would need hours and hours to do that, partially because we have a whole video series to come. Again, we don't have a timeline for that yet, but we want you guys to see this experience. And then we do have some other things in particular, and we are going to try and get this one out sooner rather than later. We recorded a podcast in the field. We basically were stuck with some downtime because of a flooded river. And it was after each of the four of us had killed our caribou. And so we have a very specific podcast, and it'll be a video podcast as well, of the four of us just sitting down and going over each of the four caribou kills and talking about, okay, for Justin's bull, how did we find it? How did we approach it? How did the shot opportunity happen? Um, what were the results of that shot? Lessons learned, etc. So we did that times four. So we'll get into like a very more practical, focused on just the hunt portion of the hunt, meaning the shot, the animal. So that's to come. But today, yeah, we just wanted to talk about kind of what's top of mind. And one thing that I think is maybe an interesting talking point. I don't know what comes to mind for you, Steve, because I didn't prep you with this, but every hunt is something I just think about is like expectations versus reality. What did I go into this hunt expecting? Maybe the number of animals, maybe what the terrain was like, maybe what the weather was going to be, etc. And then what was the reality of that? So, and it could be something else, but when I tell you, okay, for this hunt, what were some expectations and did or didn't they kind of match reality? What comes to mind?
I guess for me, I'd been in this country twice before, within a 10-mile radius of where we ended up hunting, not in that specific spot, but I had a very good idea of the adventure that we were going on. And it frankly completely lived up to everything I had built in my head and then some. It was just fantastic. The only exception was we didn't end up in where we hunted was kind of a high plateau, basically, where we climbed 2,500 feet, and then it was pretty just this huge plateau kind of basin area I mean, that first place we got to glass, we sat down and you could see 5 miles up this draw that to the left. It's like 3.5 to the one straight in front of us, 4 to the one to the right, and then another 5 to the one to like you could see into 4 different basins, which was just like that view. I've got a pretty good
Yeah.
photo of it, where it's just like you're just like we climbed up there and the sun was kind of setting, and it was absolutely beautiful. And so that part I was expecting to be more in kind of in the shale and sheep country, and we were right there, right on the edge of it. I mean, we're glassing. There was a nice doll sheep ram like sitting up on the hill to our right. The caribou were like running up and over peaks, which we were like, what the hell are they doing up there? Um, but it wasn't that. Like, that'd be the only thing it was a pretty easy hunt on your footwear choice because for the most part we were in kind of the grassy tundra-y type stuff and not on a whole lot of rocks. So that was the only expectation I had, was to be, very difficult on your feet. It's going to be, that stuff's tough, but we didn't have that
Yeah.
at all.
I mean, you had to, of course, kill the bull at the highest point on the mountain. Like you personally
Yes.
before, you're like, well, I better find
Yeah,
one at the top and show all these suckers what's up.
it definitely worked out that way. Yeah. Man, which is such a cool, I'm just like smiling ear to ear right now. Such a cool hunt. Just thinking about everything.
Here's one for me when I think of expectations for versus reality. And you either duped us or you played surprised well on this.
Hmm.
But the body size of these caribou
Oh,
was
yeah.
not what I was expecting. I mean, we had done the hunt out of Kotzebue in 2019. You had done it prior to then as well. So you'd been on two caribou hunts. Um, and we definitely killed more mature bulls this time, like just older animals for sure. But I think it definitely had something to do with this herd in general, these genetics, this place. The body size on these things was not at all was what I was expecting. And that's coming after, me seeing six caribou on the ground prior to this trip.
Yeah, they were, I would say, in between a spike elk and a raghorn bull. They were big bodied. When we killed the ones out of Kotzebue, I very distinctly remember walking up on the first one, and you're looking at them through your binoculars for however many days, but you don't have out in that country. There's not a lot of things to give you scale, to give you dimension.
Hmm.
Of there's a pine tree, there's the caribou standing next to it. It's all just flat and grass and a little bit of alder brush, but that stuff can be hard to kind of see how tall it is from a distance. And I remember walking up on them like, oh man, these are small. It's like a really big mule deer. And then these ones, so when you killed your bull in Atakatsubu, you and I were together. We were like 7, 8 miles from camp. We threw the entire thing on our back and just walked back, no problem. Probably 90-pound packs, something like that. We got to Justin's first one to shoot his, and we walk up on it. I'm like, holy crap. This is this is all four guys, very heavy packs, 100-pound packs to get this out in one trip. It was, yeah, very stark contrast. And I don't know if it's just a different, be interesting to talk to an Alaska fish and game biologist or something like that, of they're just migrating a lot less in the Alaska range than they are up there and up in the Arctic. Just, yeah, different feed, whatever. I don't know. There's certainly a reason environmentally that their bodies are just significantly larger. So that was a big, definitely in my mind. I'm kind of glad we didn't end up hunting like where I had killed my sheep, because I don't, it was physical enough. I mean, we killed all of these uh, bulls from 6 to 8-ish miles from the where the rafts were. And if we had done that in that other country with the big of that, as big as those bodies were, that would have been one. It was one hell of a chore. And where we killed them, if we had done it in that other country, it would have been, I won't say impossible, but it would have been even next level.
Yeah, that really tied me to the like killing that first one, seeing how big it was. It didn't it didn't like discourage me, but it definitely made me realize that to kill four was going to be, I think, even more work than I expected. Like that,
Hmm.
that's a lot of work. It's also easy to sit back and talk about like, oh yeah, let's just go kill it, go in there and kill four. But then when you start thinking, the distances that we were hunting, what it was like getting in and out of that country, what it's like to just take care of meat over a week, right? We killed the first one early, so we knew now we have meat to take care of, for quite a few days. You start multiplying that by four tags, and it's like, oh man, we have to do this. One, things have to go well, obviously, but two, we have to like work pretty smart and efficient to actually make it possible to kill four caribou this week. In all reality, what did we have? 6 full days in the field, I think, huntable days.
I didn't even, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I think it
Six
was
or
only,
seven.
yeah, I think it was maybe 7 with the day flying in, which is obviously not a huntable day.
Mm.
So, um, yeah, it just had to be efficient. And things escalated quickly. We'll just put it that way. The short version is we killed Justin's bull on the first hunt day. So we flown in, uh, backpacked in, glassed, but all that's a non-hunting day. Went to bed, woke up, killed Justin's bull after pursuing it for a few miles. I think we spotted that from like, it was like 3.3 miles, I think, and we made that stalk.
Well, I want to say it's, yeah, it was 3.3 and a just straight line on it. So you're at least
Yeah,
four by the time we zigzag through that country. Yeah.
yeah. So we killed his, um, loaded it up, kept pursuing more caribou we had spotted previously. Ended up killing yours that night. Ended up killing Jeff's the following morning. Uh, Took some time and some days packing a whole bunch of meat and antlers and packing to the rafts. Again, we'll get into more of this story, and then killed mine a couple days later. So it was definitely a hunt. That was one thing, just thinking through expectations and reality. I expected on this hunt to have some downtime, meaning, hey, we're gonna sit here in glass for at least 2 hours or, half a day or something like that. And there was none of that. I mean, it was nonstop hunting and packing and work for at least the first 4 days. I guess just the whole pace of the hunt was not at all what I expected.
We didn't actually add up the hours, but I think we spent less than 12 hours hunting. It's certainly less than 12 hours. It might be 6. I don't know. It wasn't much. The So that went really fast. We had this long list of all these videos we were going to shoot of tips and things like that. That were like supposed to be during the hunt, in the hunt, but we just didn't hunt. All we did was pack meat. Got lots of tips on meat packing, unloading the pack because that's kind of all we did for this trip. I guess expectations versus reality too. That I thought we are gonna have to work harder to find bulls, and I don't know if we just stumbled bass backwards into a great spot to hunt and got lucky, or or exactly what happened. But I thought we'd have to do more, yeah, sitting, glassing, locating, things like that, and it just wasn't. I mean, we very rarely sat for more than 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I'm like, oh, there's some caribou, and it just yeah, during that less than 12 hours we were hunting, it's like, oh, there's a shooter, and then pack up the packs and haul ass over there. It was
Hmm.
that part was aligned perfectly with reality, and that the hunting aspect was relatively easy. The As far as once you found the bull, it was dead. It was just a matter of time. They're not overly spooky. It's open country with a rifle. You just got to get within whatever your shooting distance is. You've got a lot of broken terrain to do that. Even if you don't have broken terrain, they're not overly skittish. We did have the only bulls that we really bumped were Jeff's, and there was one of the smaller bulls was at like 50 yards or something as we were cresting over a hill and the wind was blowing towards it, and then they ran 600 yards and stopped again. So that part was exactly how I expected, as far as just really, you know, once you found them, they were basically dead. You just had to get close enough to make the shot.
Yeah, that country is unique because it is open, but at the same time, there's also a lot going on. There's a lot of micro terrain. And so it was pretty easy to make a plan and use terrain and use cover and close distances. I mean, we kind of got pinned down on mine. Again, we're going to tell the full stories of these, but yeah, it's cool country because it's fun to see something from 3 miles away and like pursue it and then end up killing it. And obviously, as you get closer, you have to be more cautious. But there's just so much like micro terrain and little folds and draws and stuff like that, which I just enjoy that aspect um of stalking in. When it's spot and
Yeah.
stalk and you're just picking her out and using country, it's just super fun.
There was that on Justin stock too. We had two different times we were you just like, oh, there's the caribou, and it's like a straight, like we're just gonna haul ass over there, and all of a sudden you out of nowhere you come to this like 50-foot little canyon. It's like, holy
Oh
sh
yeah.
we can't get down this. And like, go down. I think that first one we ended up figuring out a way to like shoot down a couple of little slides and get across the creek and climb out the other side. And there was definitely just a lot going on in that terrain, which is also why at any given point you're sitting down. It's like you're only seeing, even though it looks wide open, you're only seeing at best half the country. There's so
Yeah.
many little pockets that they could be hiding in.
I think one thing that aligned expectations and reality, just as I think of it, is I'd never been on an early caribou hunt. But, when we hunted cots, it was much later. It was into September, mid-September. I
Hmm.
expected them to be high. Just because it was warmer, wanting them to be, up into snow if they could and cooler, out of bugs preferably, more exposed, more wind to decrease bugs. And that was certainly the case, overall for sure. That said, it was still a little bit jarring when we saw them at like some of them at the very, very tippy top of the mountain and like going up and over these snowy peaks and snowy passes. Like, okay, like in my head, that made sense that they want to be up there, but it was still wild to look at
Yeah.
these big mountains and just see caribou just like going up over the very tippy top. It was pretty cool.
Hmm. Yeah. There was that one time we were looking at the one bull, and he's standing skyline, and he just panned to the right 3/4 of a mile, and there's that Dall sheep ram sitting right there at the same elevation. They are the description of this hunt being you're hunting caribou in Dall sheep country where the Dall sheep live is 100% accurate. It's basically a sheep hunt, but you're killing a much bigger bodied animal with a much heavier horns. that was surprising. We shipped everything home, Alaska Air Cargo. The the horns with I think Jeff's was the heaviest, but with a little bit of cardboard and bubble tape around the tips was 42 pounds. So that the skull and the horns, 42 pounds. Mine was 40, I think. Justin's was 38, 39. I mean, and yours was 30. Like they're freaking heavy.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point on expectations versus reality. Is I ended up killing what was the smallest bull of the trip. That said, it was what I expected to be not necessarily the biggest bull of the trip by any means, but going
Yeah.
into this hunt, I expected like the level of bull that I killed trophy wise to be a good bull for the trip in general that anyone would have been happy to shoot. And that was, I think, everyone's expectations. What I didn't expect was three absolute giants that the rest of you guys killed. Like mine was, yeah, that was always
It
what I
was a
was
great
expecting
bowl.
and be very, very happy with, and still am very happy with. The three that you guys killed, all in their own way, because that's something obviously super unique with caribou, is they're so different, just so unique, and some are super heavy, some are palmated, and some have a lot going on up front, and some have a lot going on up top. Some do both. Like they're so unique, but I never would have really expected the three bulls that you killed. I thought maybe one of that quality, but to kill three, never would have expected that.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought we'd kill I knew they were in that country. I thought we'd kill one or two like that, but I didn't expect three. It was they just kept getting bigger. We
Yeah.
got Justin's and like holy crap, okay, there's our monster for the trip. And then I shot mine later that night and didn't really realize it. Again, their body size was, none of us are expert judges at, antler size of caribou in the field. And we shot mine and I did not think mine was as big as Justin's. And then we got up on it. And because the bodies were so big, it was hard to read and got up
Hmm.
on it like, holy crap, this one's even bigger. And then the next morning we shot Jeff's and his was even bigger. And B, yeah, they just kept getting bigger. Shocking. It's awesome. And the meat. I literally like shoot a big old bull. I'm like, well, okay, I'll just grind. I mean, I know the flavor will be good. It'll be a little tough, and I'll just grind it all up into burger or whatever. And we later on in the story, we had about 36-hour period where we were not completely out of food, but down to
Or
half or
rationing.
more than our meals were made of just eating caribou meat over the fire, which was freaking delicious, just cooking it that way. But then the meat was it's unbelievably good. Unbelievably good. We were Jeff had packed some, um, oh man, what's
It's
the
Quebec
seasoning?
steak seasoning, I think.
Not
Or
quite. Yeah, Montreal
Montreal.
steak season.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same
Montreal
difference
steak
probably.
season.
Yeah.
But we were just cutting up back straps and seasoning them. We used the oar paddle as a cutting board because that's all we had, and then just cooking them. Took some sticks and cooked them over the fire. And holy crap, that is so tender and delicious and unreal good.
We were all joking, but not joking. Like, trigger, what? Grill, what? Cast iron, what? Like, we're just gonna go
Yeah,
home
yeah,
with sticks and a campfire and this meat. It was so
yeah.
good.
It's literally on my to-do list is just take the kids and cook steak over a open fire because oh gosh, it's so delicious.
Yeah. It was one of those things too. You romanticize this idea of killing something and then cook it in the fire over the field. And it's like, oh, the best meat I've ever had. And part of that's like the ambiance and the experience.
Hmm.
But since we ended up doing it four times, I was like expecting that to almost like decrease each time of like, oh, it was cool the first time because it's the thing,
Yeah.
like it's the experience, but the meat wasn't actually as good as the environment, right?
Hmm.
But then we just kept doing it and it like didn't get any worse. I think it got better and it was just legit amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that, and so we're gonna talk. We're gonna do a specific episode on how we got the meat and antlers home, some more details to come, and then also tie that into just our experience. We want to do a follow-up to a couple things in particular. We did a pre-hunt podcast with Nick from Nick's Air Service about flying for hunts. We're gonna do a follow-up to that specifically. Same for like floating with the pack rafts, for example. We're going to do a specific episode there. So more to come on all that. We're just breezing by it today. But um, another thing that we'll have more follow-ups on for sure, because we have more hunts to come, but I know that people are eager to hear is talking a little bit about your rifle and the 6 mil Creedmoor and how it
Hmm.
performed. So again, more hunts to come, more info to come, but I call it initial impressions because it was, as much as we've talked about it a bit, it was ultimately your first hunt with
Yeah, it just barely worked. Just barely.
it.
Oh, yeah. The I think on the podcast with Form, and he said we were talking about shooting a moose, and you said it 600 yards, 700 yards, and 7 Psalm versus 6 Creed. And could you tell the difference in the wound channel? That is 100% spot on accurate. So I ended up shooting my bull at basically my max range. It was 609 yards. I always kind of say 5 to 600's max range. The how that we were laid prone for well over an hour waiting for the bull to feed closer. I was in the spongy grass. I mean, just absolutely rock solid. And so ended up feeling very confident in 609-yard shot. And he was quartered away, went in the back rib, buried in the offside front shoulder, just significant meat damage. I mean, we actually, Justin pulled up the footage yesterday, and from the time the bullet hit him, it took 8 seconds for him to collapse onto the ground. Then he kicked around for a few seconds and was done. I don't think I could draw up better bullet performance than what I saw there.
I was filming that over you, so I didn't see the animal go down, other than watching the footage after. But I also don't remember seeing the meat damage in the front quarter. I think I was just working on, we were all, all hands on deck. This was not super late in the evening, but we kind of had to move efficiently. So I don't remember seeing that. Was it too much meat damage for your tastes? I don't, yeah.
It was significant. It's an interesting, re-evaluating this topic on, why I've been shooting solid copper is to reduce meat damage, reduce meat loss. And that's why I've been shooting it for the last handful of years. It's the number one goal is when you squeeze that trigger for the animal to die. And then you got to obviously, like we talked about in this episode with Form, like you could shoot a freaking cannon through them, but the whole animal would be vaporized, right? So that's too much. So just start backing down until you get to a point where you feel like you're getting enough. Obviously, there needs to be enough damage to kill the animal, but not over the top where you're losing too much meat. And I felt like this is a good compromise. It was there was significant damage, but it wasn't over the top. If I had, and I did exactly what I said I was going to do, one shot, confirmed, like saw the impact, knew the animal was dead. I'm not going to just keep pumping lead into it for no reason, especially in that situation where that bull has nowhere to go, right?
Mhm.
He could, it's wide open country. He was actually in the snow at that point. Like there's going to be zero chance of not tracking. If I thought I made a great shot and it wasn't quite as good, there's zero chance I'm not going to find that animal. If it's mountain goat and it's standing on the edge of a cliff and I think I make a marginal shot, yeah, you probably throw a second one in them. So if I had done 2 or 3 or 4 shots, then yeah, you add all that up and be like, oof, there's there are pounds of meat that you're cutting out of there that you've lost. But
Yeah, I was say one thing I think is interesting on that with the follow-ups is so many people say, shoot till they're down. And I obviously understand exactly where they're coming from because you don't want an animal getting away. I also think for some, probably, a good number of people shooting the bigger calibers who didn't actually see the impact to read, was that a good shot in the vitals? That leads you to not having the confidence to do what you did, which was, oh, I saw this impact. It's through the vitals. It's going down in seconds. I can be patient and wait a few
yeah,
seconds. Like you said, it went down in 8 seconds versus I shot it. I think I hit it or I hit it, but I'm not sure how good. It's on its feet. I'm gonna just keep sending them till it's down. Um,
Hmm.
I think a big part of that is just I understand the intent of putting the animal down as quickly as possible. Clearly, that's the goal. But this idea that you don't actually see slash trust the impact r- feeds into this idea you just have to keep shooting when in some instances you don't.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, majority of the time. Obviously, if you make a good shot, you do not need a follow-up. One is significant to do it. One thought that had crossed my mind of, I just said 100%, I'm a meat hunter. I want to get as much meat home as possible. If this bullet is, say I go from, if I was to shoot 100 animals with solid copper and I go, even if I increase by one, if I go from, you know, 89 animals out of 100 with solid copper, I recover, and that jumps to 90 with this bullet, that's a whole other animal. So that's another 100 to 200 pounds of meat I'm getting versus the, 1 or 2 pounds that you're losing from that bullet doing more tissue damage. So if you're kind of looking at it as a big picture, all the animals I'm going to shoot over the next handful of years versus that individual animal, I think you could easily argue like, okay, well, maybe this bullet doing more damage. Obviously, it's more efficient. It's killing quicker over a larger sample size, which came up a lot, obviously, with Forms podcasts. That even if you recover one more animal from it, that way more than offsets any meat loss on individual animals. So I'm long story short, extremely happy with what we saw. My bull at 609, Justin shot his bull at 340, 350, something like that.
Yeah, with your
Both
rifle for people who
with
didn't.
my
I don't know if we
rifle.
said
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. He was packing all the camera gear, so he had 20 pounds of camera gear, and it was like when it was his turn to shoot, he was just going to borrow my rifle, and he had went out and shot with it prior to get familiar with it. We had shot on our way in as well, hiking up the mountain to verify zero. We didn't really have an opportunity to do it at the airstrip. And so he was familiar with the gun and made a great shot, and his bull went down. And again, damage was exactly as you'd want to draw it up.
Again, more to come on all that. We have more experience to get with that rifle, and we'll certainly talk about it and share the good and the bad. As we've said this whole time, like everything we're doing with the experience project is to be candid and open. Um, and there's a lot more to come on this hunt and everything else. We're just trying to provide a quick update. Any gear notes on good, bad, ugly? I mean, one, this sounds very self-serving, but it isn't. It's legitimately when I was thinking about um, gear and the way this hunt went down, and we can talk again more about the stories and why, but we did so much work, call it traditional backpacking, and then dropping camp in certain ways to then shuttle meat and do all these different things. And one of my honest to God standouts was our dry bag, and it had
Mm.
nothing to do with rain because we actually had very minimal precipitation. So, in the past, I've relied on our dry bag liners to, you know, do what they meant to do in terms of keeping water out on very, very, very wet hunts, including Alaska hunts I've done. But this one was just more about the modular system of there was numerous times we wanted to pull camp out, store camp, and then move lighter, whether that's to go get a load of meat or something of the sort. And having the dry bag to do that and leave behind or even hang in a tree, essentially your camp in that dry bag, and then to get that in and out of your pack quickly without repacking and sorting was just awesome. So again, I'm not saying it to be self-serving. It would have literally did stand out as a very clutch item on this hunt for a reason that
Okay. Yeah.
was it's and not that it's its intended purpose. That's not its primary purpose, I guess.
Yeah. It was, yeah, the dry bags was fantastic. Also, just, it's actually, I was, the first time I had hunted with a stock K4 pack.
Ever.
Actually, I had a few little things that were like I was testing some different foam and things like that, but
Yeah.
the overall picture was a stock K4 pack. And ever since development back at the end of 2022, all of 23, I hunted with prototypes, and it was the first time I'd hunted with it, and just yet to be self-serving, I was like, God damn, these things are good. They
Yeah.
were, um, man, they just perform through all the different loads. We legit had like a 48-hour window where all we just slept and then packed meat, hiked the river to get rafts. So it was one load after another between meat, antlers, rafts, and just everything I threw at it. It performed flawlessly. I was very, very impressed. Not to say I had forgotten how good it is, but I hadn't hunted with a stock one said since well, I never hunted with a stock one. Like
An actual
end of
production one.
2022, an
Yeah.
actual production. Yeah,
Yeah.
the end of 2022 was there was still some final minor little design things that we had tweaked with, and then rolled into 2023 of me playing with prototypes all last year, and yeah, uh, it was impressive.
I still have to laugh because you mentioned that like it hit you on the first night. I think it was the first night, maybe the following morning. You're like, I just realized this is the first hunt with a stock like production K4. And I was like, oh, sure enough. And I was like,
Yeah,
wait a second. It's not actually like it is production, but we were testing some different like internals and
yeah.
foams and stuff like you said. So you technically like your first time with an asterisk because it's also
The
not
first,
fully
yeah.
true, which
Yeah. But
cracks me up.
I mean, it's my rule, right? Like if I'm not testing and prototyping for future stuff, I'm wasting valuable time out there because I
Yeah,
can do
what
all the
better
hikes I
test?
want all spring and summer long. You cannot replicate actual field conditions without you just can't do it. You just got to get out there and use the stuff in the field. And so, yeah. The a gear standout for me was the SIG binos. Jeff Bloomquist wanted to borrow a set and test them out, so I brought them. I had my EL ranges. Man, I can't wait for that to get better. The the new they're Zulu sixes, I think. I
Pro,
can't
I
remember.
think.
No, I don't think it's called Pro. Anyways, the latest Zulu six. Yeah, the 12 by 42s. Every time I wanted to see something, I'm like, Jeff, hand me those. Like, it was it was constant because you could just see so much better, especially at distance where you're just stable. And
Hmm.
because we were never sitting and glassing, I had brought my binocular tripod mount. I never once connected it and set it up because we were just moving and moving and moving. And in that scenario, those binos are just incredible. When we left, we killed Justin's bull, and it was literally uphill for like a mile and a half to 2 miles, kind of uphill side hill, not crazy hill, but we're going up, not down. And we had like all had 110, 120 pound packs, and Jeff was able to stop, click on the image stabilization, and we were going to look for the six bulls that we'd seen earlier that morning. And every time we'd come over a little rise, he could glass effectively. And I'm breathing hard. We're packing heavy weight, and you're kind of hunched over. And the those binos are just incredible. Um, so again, my I cannot wait for when someone takes like the quality of glass that's in my SIGs, the range finding ability that's in my Swaros, the range finding ability that of a SIG, and then dumps that into an image stabilized binocular. Whew, that's going to be a pretty badass product.
You might actually use the term game changer at that
Game
point.
changer. Yeah, maybe. No, they were very impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. I was right and wrong. The pros are the new ones, but the pros specifically are the 50 mil objectives, it looks like.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So those
That's
came
what it
out.
is. Like
I
just
think
came out, yeah.
just came out. Yeah. I was gonna try to get a set to take up on the moose hunt.
I was just like looking at my list. Again, we're gonna talk about pack rafting in more detail. That's its own thing. There's just on I mean, we said this a bunch of times. The goal with gear is to have stuff that you know and have used and can then trust. And it's not always about like what's new, what's the best, what's whatever. It's like, hey, what do I have that I've proved to myself and that I trust? And really, this hunt was very similar to most backpack hunts. My gear, I'm looking at, there's not much new on it. It was just almost adding this packraft element to a backpack hunt, is really how I felt
Mhm.
about it, just from an overall packing perspective, etc. And then obviously with pack rafting, there's just stuff that goes with that. So you have the raft itself, yes, but you obviously have like a PFD and paddle and waders and, lashing and yeah, we'll get into all that. But yeah, overall, man, it was just like, I mean, and that's legitimately how the hunt went down. We backpacked and then we rafted out. And from a gear perspective, that's what it felt like, a backpack hunt with this rafting element when we need it.
Yeah, we'll do a whole episode on the pack rafts and things we learned, but just high level expectations blown away. Like those alpaca rafts were phenomenal. This hunt would not be possible without some type of raft. What these ones do for the weight that they are, the packability that they have, they're incredible. We were all blown away. And
Yep.
we had, yeah, it's in the story, but we had some crazy flooding kind of basically over a 24-hour period. The river rose like 3 feet ish,
Yeah, at
and then we
least
floated
three.
out the next day in very high water, like spring runoff type conditions, with like legit rafts going in the trough of waves and coming out, and you're crashing into waves and getting splashed in the face. This was not a mellow float out, especially that first 3.5, 4 miles, and the rafts performed amazing. I'm already racking my brain on. I just want to find hunts that I can use those on because
Yeah.
to access country or be able to get out of country like we just did efficiently, easy with those things, man, they were incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. Yeah, we'll talk more about it. Super impressed and want to do more of it. That's for sure. One little thing just stood out in my gear list. I ran the Wiser Precision BA7 Sparrow. So their little bino, I don't want to call it a clamp because it's more of a strap, but
Hmm.
their Arca essentially adapter for binos. And it also has a recessed cup basically on the bottom where you can just invert a trekking pole.
Oh, is that
And
what you were doing?
yeah, yeah,
I
it
saw you
was
doing that a bunch of
slick.
times, and I never even asked what you were doing. Just
Yeah.
other than using your trekking poles, it's some type of quick support. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So I've run I've used numerous, like the Asiac, which I really like. Really right stuff, which has a good one. All these different types of attachments to put Arca low profile on your binos. Because for me, I want Arca for when I'm bino mounted, but I want something that's ideally permanently installed or semi-permanently installed, but low profile enough that it's not bulky. It doesn't interfere with putting my binos in a harness, etc. And I had seen the one from Wiser, I think probably back at Hunt Expos when I first saw it. Um, but it was the first time I've really spent time with it in the field. And yeah, I really like it. It's again Arca, and then it has a recessed kind of cup. And so if you invert the trekking pole, you're putting the trekking pole tip in this cup. And instead of just balancing the binos on a trekking pole, like is obviously possible to do, this one basically has more of a fit for it. And so just kind of, again, we didn't sit and spend a massive amount of time glassing. So I didn't spend much time, any time actually putting binos on a tripod. But when you'd sit for just a little bit and just grab a trekking pole and put it on there, yeah, it was a slick little system. It's low profile and light. So uh, that's super minor, but definitely happy with it. Yeah, we'll do more gear debrief to come for sure. More on pack crafting, more on getting meat home, more on flying, more on the hunt story. So yeah, a lot more to come, and then clearly the videos of the whole hunt, and you guys can see it. So yeah, stay tuned for all that. As you said, Steve, in the beginning, there's just a heck of a lot going on, and we're figuring out how to get all this out to you guys. And you have what, 2.5, 3 weeks before you're back up there for moose?
Yeah, less than like we leave Saturday, so 3 weeks less 2 days now. Yeah, and I never did. We were supposed to do that day before we flew out. I was supposed to shoot the "What's in My Pack" video. So many damn things going on. It did not happen that day, so we'll do a post hunt "What's in My Pack" video for that, which is kind of a cool perspective as well. This is what I took, and it's what worked, what I didn't use, what I used more than I expected, things like that. I'll definitely have that on the list to get done before we leave for moose. Yeah, in the meantime, I'm re-gearing up and getting ready for the moose hunt, and we're moving into a new building here very shortly in the next 2 weeks, which is crazy. There's a lot of things going on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a wrap. Obviously, much more to come. So if you want to make sure you get all that whenever it comes, there's basically you can do a few things or just do one thing. The few things are so make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. You'll get podcast episodes, obviously, as always, for free. But you will miss things like the YouTube videos, etc. So you could go subscribe on YouTube if you want to get that. Or the easiest, like one-stop do-it-all would be to go sign up for our email newsletter. You will get the podcasts, you'll get the videos, and you'll get more, and we won't send you junk. So appreciate you guys and your support. If you do have questions, be sure to send those in. We can either do that as a follow-up on a Monday Minute, or just as we're talking about topics such as the gear or flying or pack rafting, we'll make sure we address those questions that you guys send in. And yeah, if you have questions as well, not related specifically to these hunts, but just other gear hunt questions, always feel free to send those in. We'll get those included on a future Monday Minute as well. But thanks for tuning in. We're super excited to share more of this adventure with you guys in the days, weeks, and months to come.
Yeah, it was one heck of a start for that first hunt. It's going to be tough to live up to how that one went down.